So the topic of today is tinnitus. And the first thing I want to do is give you an idea of what it sounds like. So we've got a little clip here.
Can you hear a whistling, buzzing, or hissing in your ears? You could have tinnitus. Tinnitus is very...
Okay, so that gives you an idea of some of the unpleasant sounds that some people have to deal with. The volume varies. That was on quite a low volume, but some sufferers describe it as so loud it blots out everything else. So like standing next to a jet plane taking off, or sound like somebody banging pots and pans next to your head. So it can be very unpleasant, and it can drive some people to suicide. So it can be a very serious condition. Usually it's not that bad, but occasionally it does take over people's lives. So 20% of the population will experience some form of tinnitus at some time in their life. Only 1.6% will go on to develop problems which will take them looking for help or looking for some sort of intervention. Medics, unfortunately, will often say that nothing can be done. They're wrong. There is a lot that can be done. It's just that they're not in a very good position to do anything. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what causes the tinnitus or what maintains the tinnitus. In times of stress, we're wired for vigilance. You can imagine if you're being hunted by a predator, you want to be able to hear that predator coming from as far away as possible or as soon as possible. So in times of stress, that hardwire circuit gets tripped and your hearing becomes very acute. It's like it's turned up the amplifier so much that you start to hear your own nervous system. And your nervous system is the thing that makes those buzzes and clicks and squeaks that we heard on the earlier slide. So the volume goes up, and with most people, once the stress is gone, or the incident has been recovered from, then the volume will drop down again back to where it was before. So listening for the predator is what it's all about. Just think of it as arousal. If your nervous system is aroused, then you'll be likely to hear things that you wouldn't normally hear. Now, for most people, they're able to relax at some time, but some people aren't. And everybody can hear the buzz of their nervous system if they try hard enough. There was an experiment done in 1953, Howler and Bergman, a couple of investigators, and they took 100 people and individually put these people into a soundproof room with a loudspeaker. And they asked the individuals to report what sounds they heard from the loudspeaker. And 93 out of the 100 reported hearing something, even though the speaker wasn't connected to anything. So what happened was that they were turning up the volume because they were anticipating hearing something, and until they heard something, they couldn't relax. So once you start hearing tinnitus, how do you stop hearing it? Well, education is the key. It's linked to arousal, as already mentioned, and if you're continually looking for danger, then your system can't relax. So if you think about tinnitus as being the product of an irritated nervous system, we then have to look for things to calm that down. The good news is most people with tinnitus will get better. People who do get better tend to move on in their lives and forget about it. So they don't go around telling everybody, oh, my tinnitus is cured, it's fantastic. They just dismiss it, and we rarely hear the happy stories. How did they do it is the question that most sufferers want to hear about. The key to treating your tinnitus is to get out of your head and into your body. So if you think about the tinnitus coming from out of the head, down into the body. So body-centered therapies tend to be very helpful. You need to learn to soothe yourself. So things that help you relax, there's a list of some of the common things. Yoga, Tai Chi, yawning is excellent. If you have a big yawn, that relaxes all the tissues around the throat, around the ears, around the cheeks. And tinnitus tends to affect, it's like wearing a bandana. You know, you've got this bandana around the bottom half of your head. All those tissues are the ones that you want to calm down. So things as simple as just holding your jaw and just having your hands there, comforting it, can be very helpful. Yawning is actually very, very good. Meditation is very helpful. Lots of people get a bit spooked by the word meditation. They think it's a bit woo. The way I like to describe it is this: if you imagine one of those old-fashioned 80s style open plan offices where you've got, 60 odd people in a great big room, they've all got their little workstations, one or two screens here and there. And if you can imagine it's getting on in the day and everybody's getting a bit tired and a bit crabby. Waste paper bins are full and overflowing. There's empty coffee cups on the desk. It's all a bit messy, but people keep working and the cleaners are waiting to come in. But they can't come in because everybody's still working. And then suddenly somebody in the corner says, hey, everybody, come and look at this. And everybody goes off to that corner of the room to look at whatever this person's got to show them. And while they're preoccupied and distracted over in the corner, the cleaners can come in and they can clean maybe 90% of the office. Now that's what meditation is. It's a way of distracting your busy mind into one activity so that the processes of repair and cleaning can go on unhindered. Now, meditation can take many forms. Some people like to repeat a mantra or a sound or a word. Some people like to meditate looking at a flower or a candle flame. There are breathing exercises that you can do. You can almost invent your own form of meditation, as long as it's something which you can focus your mind on to the exclusion of most other things, it will work. At the end, I'll give you one of my favorite ones, but for now, let's just move through the list. Reflexology, that's a body therapy. If you're lying there having your feet pressed gently and the nerves stimulated in a relaxing way, that will calm down the arousal, calm down the autonomic nervous system, that fight or flight response. And once that happens, the tinnitus will begin to calm a bit as well. Hypnotherapy can be very helpful. Back in the days when I did hypno-NLP, back in the 90s, I remember doing a reframe with a client at the time, and she had tinnitus, and I asked her what it sounded like. And she said, it sounds like a London Underground when you're going in and out of a station, that sort of whooshy noise. So anyway, we did some work on that and reframed it so that she could imagine herself actually in the tube, and she would invite her various friends that she hadn't seen for years, or maybe some weren't even alive, but she'd invite her friends to come and join her on the tube, and they would have a little conversation. And she found this so enjoyable that the tinnitus it wasn't a problem for her anymore. It was something that she looked forward to, having these chats at night before she went to sleep. So she would lie in her bed and just do this visualization. That's quite an unusual one, but hypnotherapy can be very helpful. Cranial osteopathy, I think it's fantastic, but then obviously I'm biased. The speaker on Saturday, who had suffered from 25 years, I think he said, well, since about the age of 20, he'd suffered this very, very loud tinnitus. And he said that his improvement began when he had a treatment, cranial osteopathy treatment, once a week for 6 weeks. And he thought it was like magic. And he was saying to the therapist, "What did you do? What did you do? You just turned it down. How did you do that?" But all the therapist was doing was relaxing the nervous system. What to avoid? You want to avoid things which make you stressed. Avoid that famous medical journal, the Daily Mail. I don't think you can read that newspaper without being depressed and angry. So give it a miss. Stimulants, things that keep you aroused, caffeine, things that you might use to improve your attention if you're a student. Anything that keeps you buzzing is not good for tinnitus. Loud noises are best avoided. If you're going to a concert or a cinema, most cinemas are too loud. I mean, they're running about 100 decibels, which is too loud. But you can get musicians' earplugs, which will cut down a lot of the sound without distorting it. So for about 20 quid or so, you can get a pair of these online. Keep them in your pocket or your handbag. And if you find yourself unavoidably in a noisy place, just pop them in, and that will save you discomfort and save winding up the tinnitus noises. Negative thoughts. Again, negative thoughts tend to make people worried. Worry feeds into the stress. So if you start browsing YouTube and you're a tinnitus sufferer, sooner or later you're going to come across people who say, "Oh, I've had this for 50 years and it's never going to go away and it's horrible, and you might as well just stick your head in the gas oven, you're never going to cure it." I mean, things like that are not in the slightest bit helpful, and they're best avoided. Confirmation bias works both ways. If you can find people who have positive thoughts and you can look for things to support that, then that would be much more therapeutic for you than dwelling on the misery. So I will share another resource at the end, which is an app where you can get lots of stories about how people manage to sort out their own tinnitus. There, just jumped in its own. Where are we? There. Yeah, so avoid the negative thoughts, avoid the rolling news channels. 10 minutes a day is probably enough to keep up to date. You don't need to be told every half hour about the horrible things that are going on in the world, or getting fearful about the things that might happen. Best avoided. Doom and gloom merchants, just be careful who you talk to. And if you know that somebody is a very negative sort of person, cut them off your Christmas card list. Just avoid them. So some parting words. Hearing is all about interpretation. There was some work done by a Polish guy whose name I've got somewhere. Anyway, I can find it if anybody needs it. A Polish researcher, and he demonstrated that hearing very much depends on how you interpret the sounds, and also the environment and the state of mind that you spend time in. So you can alter your perception of sound. If you're aroused, stimulated, overstimulated, the only thing you might hear is your nervous system. But the opposite is true. If you're calm, you feel safe, secure, relaxed, you can fall asleep in front of a loud television. I think a lot of us often do. If you can't fix it yourself, get professional help. Always good for any sort of problem that crops up in life. A little bit of small print. Did I mention cranial osteopathy? It's very good at calming the nervous system, but it can lead to addiction, so be careful. Some resources. There's an app available for iPhones, Androids, probably other things, called, so I've got quick in there, it's Quieten. Sorry, I'll see if I can change that. Edit. Quieten, there we are. You can get that on the App Store. It's a free app. There are in-app purchases if you want to spend money, but you don't have to. Let's go to the right slide. This is why I'm in navigating. I said I'd talk about one of my favorite meditation techniques, and this is a bit of a weird one. The accountants in the room will probably enjoy it, and anybody with a mathematical bend. It's called Fibonacci breathing. The Fibonacci series is a series of numbers, and the way you make the series is by starting with the number 1, and then you add to it the number to the left, which with number 1 would be 0. So you add together 1 and 0, which makes 1, so that becomes the third number in the series. You then add 1 and 1 together, which makes 2, and then you add 2 and 1, which makes 3, 3 and 2 makes 5, 5 and 3 makes 8, etc. So the Fibonacci series is, anybody who's an architect will have heard about it, or a botanist, because nature and building tends to use the Fibonacci series. You have things like the magic ratio in construction, especially Middle Eastern temples. They love to have their golden triangles and mystic interpretations. The reason I'm like Fibonacci breathing is because you can choose where to go in the series. And the way that I would recommend you start with it is to use it for breathing. So if you were to breathe in for a period of 3 and out for a period of 5, you'd be doing Fibonacci breathing. So you could just count mentally, 1, 2, 3 as you breathe in, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as you breathe out. And that in itself would be a nice, easy meditation. You can make it a bit more sophisticated by turning it into a walking meditation. So this time, as you're walking along, you would breathe in for 3 steps, breathe out for 5 steps. And I can pretty much guarantee if you do that for 5 or 10 minutes while walking, you won't be able to think of anything else. And your nervous system will be so relaxed that you will forget to hear your tinnitus. So that's just one resource. There are lots of resources, and it's a question of finding what works best for you. When I treat patients with tinnitus, a lot of it is making them do something themselves. So, if somebody comes along and I say, "How's the tinnitus?" and they say, "Oh, it's an 8 or it's a 7." And if that's no better than last time, then I would say, "Well, what have you done this week, to soothe yourself?" And I say, "Oh, well, I've been a bit busy, I didn't quite get around to it." Then you have to put the ball back in their court. So it's not something that I or any therapist can cure on their own, but we can be part of the team, part of the resources. The other thing I didn't get around to putting on this slide is the sort of person that tends to suffer from tinnitus, and they're the people who live in their heads. They tend to be anxious, fussy, maybe OCD, obsessive compulsive, never switch off mentally, always stressed, always busy, always in a hurry, always planning,